If you're interested in starting or growing your freelance e-learning business, then you're probably wondering what it costs to conduct business in this space. So in this video, I will give you a detailed breakdown of all of the different expenses you should expect as a freelance instructional designer or e-learning developer. Most people think that as long as you have an e-learning development tool, then you're good to go, but there are actually quite a few more costs associated with freelancing. So let's dive into them. The main categories we're looking at are legal and admin expenses, the tools of the trade, so the tools you need to actually get the job done, taxes and insurance expenses, and office furniture and supplies. So we'll look at each one of these categories in a bit more detail. And I also want to note that I'm based in the United States, and some of these expenses will be very US specific. So I'll note those when they come up, but if you are living somewhere else in the world, then you just keep that in mind as we go through this. So first up, let's look at the legal and admin expenses. So the main one here is just forming a limited liability company. So if you're in the US, you probably will want to form an LLC just to give yourself a bit of legal protection. You'll want to use this LLC on your contracts so that if something goes wrong, the client isn't coming after you, but they're coming after your company. Again, I'm not a lawyer or a tax professional, so take all of this as you will. I'm just speaking from my experience. So it costs about $100 here in Florida to register an LLC. And then it costs about $140 per year to just keep that LLC registered. Now, this expense will actually vary on a state-by-state basis. So in Florida, I think it's relatively cheap. This is probably on the cheaper end, but to just look up LLC expenses for your state. It may be cheaper or may be more expensive, but it probably will not be any more than $500 a year. That's like probably the high end. Okay, tools of the trade. So this is where the majority of the expenses will come in because we need to make sure we have all of the software required to do our jobs. Articulate 360 is probably the primary tool freelancers are using right now just because most of the e-learning work out there does use Articulate Storyline or Articulate Rise. So this is like the core software. This is about $1,000 per year. The Adobe Suite, this is another one. It's kind of any creative designer's best friend. The pricing is getting up there. It does run about $640 per year. But there are some cheaper alternatives like Affinity Designer. Like the Affinity Suite has a few competing tools which are much less expensive. But the Adobe Suite is good because you have your vector editing tool, Adobe Illustrator. You can edit photos with Adobe Photoshop. You can do all of your motion graphics and video editing work with Adobe After Effects and Premiere. And all of that and more is included in this suite. So if you wanted to just pay one monthly subscription for all of those creative design tools, the Adobe Creative Cloud is a good option to go with. QuickBooks Online. This is what I use to send all of my invoices and track all of my expenses. So this is a simple, beginner-friendly accounting tool. It runs $300 per year. There are some free alternatives, but then they charge you a percentage of your invoice. So it can actually wind up being much more expensive if you go with a tool that seems free. So this is $25 a month or $300 per year. Freepik.com. This tool has so many great vector graphics and photorealistic images available. And it can be free, but then you have to give attribution anytime you use one of their visuals. So this is like my main source of graphics that I use for all of my e-learning projects. It's not very expensive. I think it's a great bang for its buck compared to alternatives. So this is where, again, I source visuals, $120 a year. Then, of course, you need a website builder, a domain name, and hosting so that you can have your site online and your online presence. This can be very cheap. So a domain runs about $12 per year, and hosting can be as cheap as just like $3 a month or $36 per year. So that's how we get to the $50 mark. The website builder in that case would need to be something like WordPress.org, which is open source, or custom code. When you dive into the Website building tools like Wix and Squarespace and Webflow, that's how you can get up closer to $100 or $200 plus per year, but it can save you a lot of time and give you some useful templates to use. So these expenses will range between $50 and $220 per year, and as your traffic grows and you want to get fancier, it can get even more expensive. So these are what I would call like the essential tools. You need your invoicing software, you need somewhere to get visuals or graphics, you need these creative tools that come with the Adobe suite so that you can manipulate images and videos. You need your e-learning development tool, and you need to have a website online. So if you have those, these are like the essentials. Now let's talk about some optional tools that can quickly add to your expenses but are definitely not necessary when you're just starting out. First up, we have cloud storage. I think I have a terabyte of storage on Google, and that runs $99 per year. So it's good to have all of your stuff backed up. You definitely do not want your stuff just sitting on your desktop, because if you lose that, then you can be spending hundreds of hours rebuilding things, and it can get into some really sticky situations. So cloud storage is just a good insurance policy to have your stuff backed up. But again, you probably don't need to spend this much right out the gate. Zoom Pro, this is a good option if you need to host Zoom meetings with more than one participant. So if you're meeting with clients and you want multiple of them to be able to schedule with you at the same time, this is a very good tool to use. Email marketing. So if you want to capture leads and send automated emails, and you can basically use it to double as like a customer relationship management platform, so you can tag people, send them personalized emails based on how they're interacting with your content. This can range anywhere between $240 to $600+ per year. Adobe Stock, this is another tool you can use to source images and visuals for your projects. It's $360 per year for just 10 visual assets per month. So it can quickly get more expensive if you need more graphics as you go. TechSmith, Camtasia, and Snagit, this is just a one-time fee of $300, but it's useful for some projects. I use Snagit for all of my screenshots, and Camtasia is good because some teams are more familiar with it, and it is a quick and easy way to edit videos and create simple videos. A custom email domain. So like my email address I use for all of my business affairs is devlin@peck.consulting. So I have to pay $72 per year to Google so that I can use that peck.consulting domain instead of just gmail.com. So that's a way to add a bit more professionalism to your email address, but again, it's not required. And finally, the LinkedIn business option. This is LinkedIn Premium. It lets you send 15 in-mails per month. It lets you see who is viewing your profile. It gives you access to LinkedIn Learning. So you get some benefits with that as well. It can help you grow your business, but it is almost $600 per year, and it is not necessary. Okay, so that was the tools and tech. Now let's talk about the taxes and insurance, because this can be some of the biggest expenses, and it likely will be from a dollar perspective. So the only additional tax you are paying as a freelancer or a 1099 contractor is self-employment tax. Okay, you have to pay other taxes too. You have to pay your federal taxes, you have to pay your state income taxes, but full-time employees have to pay all of those taxes as well. The only difference is that when you are a full-time employee, your employer is paying this portion of your Social Security and Medicare taxes. So 7.65% is just half of those taxes. When you're a full-time employee, you pay half and your employer pays half. When you're self-employed, you have to pay that full amount. Okay? Now that being said, when you invoice a client for say $10,000, you need to set aside a lot more than just 7.65% of that, because when you're a full-time employee, those regular taxes are all being deducted from your paycheck and being sent to the IRS. But when you are self-employed, you are responsible for paying your quarterly taxes. And if you're spending that money and you don't have that money there, then you're going to be in a not very great situation. You're going to have to pay a lot of money to get out of it. So I think a general rule of thumb, at least when you're first starting, is set aside 30% of all of your freelance income, at least until you work with an accountant and you know what type of quarterly taxes you should expect to pay and what your yearly tax liability will look like. But when it comes to the additional taxes you pay as a freelancer, it's only the 7.65%. So if you make $100,000, you're paying an additional $7,600 per year compared to a full-time employee who is making that amount of money. I hope that makes sense. Read up on self-employment tax further if you're still a bit hazy on this. Health insurance. So here in the US, obviously health insurance can get very, very expensive. And if you are not a full-time employee or you aren't covered by someone in your family with health insurance, then you need to pay for it yourself. So this again will vary greatly based on your income level and where you are in the country, like which state you're in. I'm here in Florida, and I'm fairly young with no real health issues. I pay $400 a month for health insurance. I think this is on the very, very low end. I've heard of people paying $1,200 a month for health insurance. So this ranges quite a bit, and again, based on your situation, you may be covered, but the general range here is $5,000 to $15,000 per year for health insurance. Tax preparation and planning. So odds are you'll probably want a tax professional to prepare your business returns to make sure that you're taking all of the right deductions, to make sure that you are filing correctly, and just to reduce the chance of getting audited and to save some money. So this ranges between $500 per year and $3,500 per year. You may be able to do it cheaper, and you can of course get more expensive as things get more complex. But I would suggest maybe just doing a 1-hour consultation with an accountant early. Research the stuff we're talking about here, talk to the accountant about that, and just make sure you have your head around what needs to happen tax-wise. Professional liability insurance, this is good to have for any business so that if you do get stuck in a sticky situation, you don't get sued and to go out of business. I think the general price or cost for this is about $50 per month or $600 per year. It's not required, but it's a good idea. Okay. And now finally, we have office expenses. So to give some context here, this office I'm sitting in, we moved into a bigger apartment so that we could have an office to do our work in. So home office expenses, you can write these off on your taxes. You can actually write off all of these expenses we've been talking about on your taxes when you're a freelancer. So depending on your rent payments, and depending on whether or not you actually are dedicating an area of your home to freelancing, your expense for that will be anywhere between $4,500 per year to $10,000 plus per year. Again, it depends on your cost of living, how expensive your rent is, and whether or not and what portion of your home you are dedicating to the business. So read up on that. Again, this isn't a video about how to write off these things, but just to give you an idea, because it's kind of hard to do your business from your living room or your bedroom. It does definitely help with productivity when you have a dedicated space for it. An office chair, of course. If you're going to be spending a lot of time at your home and not in the office, you want to make sure that you have an ergonomic setup. You want to be comfortable. This can range anywhere between $100 and $2,000 plus. So again, depending on your upfront budget to get this off the ground will depend on how much you're willing to spend. A desk, if you want a standing desk, it's going to be more expensive, but it will be more ergonomic and can help you be more productive, so it can pay for itself over time. You will, of course, want a strong and powerful computer. I think this ranges from I'm sure you can get a capable desktop for around $1,000 if you build it yourself, but for most of the capable laptops and strong desktop builds, you'll be looking at around $2,000 or at least $1,500 plus. Internet payments. Of course, you need internet to do your business. This is around $600 per year, but of course it depends on where you are and which provider you are using, but you will want some high-speed internet if you have that available. And then a cell phone, you need a cell phone to do business. You will be on calls. You will need to manage your business when you're on the go. So this is probably a $1,000 upfront payment and then $1,200 per year or so for service. So again, all of this here, everything we've discussed, these are things that you can write off on your taxes. So it reduces your tax liability, and the money you spend on these things is essentially tax-free. But again, talk to a tax professional to work all of this out. But that is the silver lining when you are self-employed and running your own business. So let's check out some grand totals here. Let's see what we're actually looking at. So with the legal and admin expenses, this is anywhere between $100 and $150 per year. If you're in an estate with expensive LLC fees, it might be closer to $500 per year, but I don't think it goes that high. Tools of the trade. This will be a big expense. This is anywhere between $2 and $4 grand per year. I'm sure you can do this on the low end, especially when you're just getting started and doing some simple instructional design and e-learning development projects. Taxes and insurance. This will range vastly because the more money you're making, the more of those self-employment taxes that you're paying, right? And this doesn't even account for the actual income taxes that you will need to pay, the general income taxes. So expenses will be higher than what you're seeing here because of those additional taxes that come into play. But general guideline for all of the taxes and insurance that we discussed, we're looking at between 6 and 20 grand per year. If your insurance is covered and if you're not making much, it's going to be on the very, very low end of this, probably less than $6,000. But if you are on the hook for your own health insurance and if you are making decent money, that's going to can get much higher than 20K. Office furniture and supplies, we're looking at about a $3,500 upfront cost with a recurring cost of maybe $5,500 per year, and that is including the actual office space, so the monthly rent for your office space in your home. I hope that I explained that well. So our grand total we're looking at here is almost 14 grand per year. Your mileage may vary, especially depending on where you are in the States, where you are in the world, and your unique situation. If I have forgotten any expenses, or if you have questions about certain expenses, please drop a comment below. I tried to be pretty comprehensive with this, but I'm sure some things may have slipped through the cracks. And if this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in freelancing, please subscribe to this channel because there will be more helpful e-learning and instructional design freelancing content to come. So thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.